All right, welcome everyone to the sixth episode of your new favorite Warhammer the Old World podcast, Motley Crude. I'm Kevin. I'm happy to be here tonight. How's everybody doing?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. And what about you, Andrew?
I am also good.
Perfect. Have we all come down from our high of wargaming last weekend at the SBOT in Toronto?
I don't know if I've recovered my sleep.
Yeah, we were. Where the party house was popping, and we didn't get much sleep. That's for sure.
I got an extra day of hype from the SBOToronto because on the way home I got a flat and had to spend the night in Markham until I can get it fixed in the morning.
Amazing. That's
No, it wasn't amazing. That is the opposite word to use for what happened.
Really, Markham is not the tourist destination it's made out to be?
No.
No. All right. Okay. So, all that aside, tonight we're going to be talking about the GT we all attended over the weekend. That's the SBOT Toronto, run and hosted by the Square Based podcast in collaboration with some of their local partners there. This episode tonight is going to be the really sweaty, nerdy. We're talking about our matchups and our games episode. And then next week, we're going to have the infamous Val Heffelfinger himself on the podcast here, and we're going to talk about the event overall, how it went, what we thought of the infamous FAQ and tournament pack that we spent the last episode ragging about, and then we're going to talk about the upcoming team tournament that we've got here in Ottawa coming up. So that's going to be our focus for this evening. Before we kick off with that, let's do a little bit of a hobby roundtable. I'm going to kick off with Ryan tonight.
So the only hobbying I've accomplished since our last episode was to aggressively, quote unquote, finish painting my Bretonians for SBOT. And by finish, I mean meet the bare minimum requirements of battle ready. So that's all. That's all I've been up to.
I think once you've just topped off those bases there, the little bit of color, you'll be 99% done.
Oh yeah, like all they need is bases and like decals on the shields and like a couple touch-ups where I made like really bad mistakes and they'll be fine.
Let me guess, are the decals going to be black griffins, sideways profile?
Quite possibly.
Fair enough. I figured from the color scheme. Okay, Andrew, what's new in your hobby?
After last week's episode, I pulled 2 super late nighters and was able to completely finish my Dark Elf army. Even the basing, which I didn't think I'd have enough time to, but it turns out that snow stuff actually goes on quicker than I originally thought, even though, I don't know, it looks fine. It doesn't look all weird and splotchy like I was worried. I might go back and touch up the witch elves a bit, because after I painted them, I did a technique where I dipped like a big fat dry brush in Blood for the Blood God, and then used my airbrush to like blast the paint off the edge of the brush onto the models to look like blood splatter.
Yeah.
And the effect looks really cool, but some of them got it like in the eyes. So that kind of doesn't make sense for them to have like blood like directly on their eyeballs. So I might go back and just fix that so it doesn't look weird.
Sure.
But other than that, I've done no hobbies since. I've just been playing a little bit of Diablo 4 before I start a new Necromunda crew.
Awesome. What crew are you doing?
I'm gonna do the police, the Palanite Enforcers.
Nice. You're gonna do a police car to go along with them?
Yeah, I gotta buy that weird vehicle they released for the crew. That's like one of the few things I haven't bought from Necromunda, because I've basically 100%ed the rest of the line. That's like the one thing I'm missing.
Sure, that truck is super cool, so not a hard sell for sure.
Yeah, and I have some other vehicles from like 40k that I'm going to sort of rig up to be Necromunda. Like, I don't know what the Gene Stealer pickup truck is called, but I have like one of those.
Yeah, the Goliath.
Okay, yeah. So I got one of those that I'm gonna build for this too, because the next phase of our campaign, it's like switching over to in the ash waste.
Okay.
So in between phases, I'm gonna retire my Gene Steel, or not my Gene Steel cult, Corpse Grinder cult, and pick up the cops instead.
Nice. Let me know if you need a second Goliath truck, because I've got one laying around in box that I'll never need.
Yeah, maybe I'll talk to you after the podcast.
Sure. Okay, so on my end, hobby-wise, it's been pretty limited since our last episode, given that like half the week was occupied with driving or attending the SBOT tournament. So aside from that, I've continued painting my Amazons for Mordheim. About 5 models done right now, which is cool. And the tournaments re-energized me to paint a few more Chaos Dwarf models. I'm thinking of going for the Big Bale Taurus. I have a great Taurus, which is like the old 1993 Taurus model, but I do also have the massive Forge Road one built and ready to paint, which I kind of feeling like tackling now. And then otherwise, I'm signed up for the SBOT online tournament, which I'm playing my first game in tomorrow. I pulled fun Sisters of the Thorn, Pillar of Fire, Spam Wood Elf list, and I'll keep you all posted with regards to how that plays out for me. So that's about it. So now that we've talked about our hobby, let's talk about the news. It's limited. There's not much. But Ryan, you want to talk about some of the events we've got coming up here locally over the next few months?
Absolutely. So, coming up, I'll expand this to a little bit regionally, but in early November, there's an event in Kingston, Ontario, a 3-round 2,000-point tournament. Following that, we have my French is terrible, so it's Ludo. We have Ludo in on the other side of the river in the Quebec portion of the National Capital Region, which will be a heavily comped 1,500-point tournament being held at a bit of a local board game convention. And then following that in early December, we have for those who've been around for a few minutes, a Highlander tournament, a 1,500-point tournament where you can only have one of any given unit selection in your army. Hence the whole name, there can only be one.
Yeah.
Being put on by our local long-standing event organizer Danny McDonald at the Red Dragon. And then lastly, the weekend after that, there is a tournament again on the Quebec side of the river, and that's a 2,000-point 3-round event at FDB.
Awesome. So there's a lot going on here over the next few weeks. If you're within driving distance, we'd love to have you over. I'm sure some of us will be participating in some of those events in some capacity. So all right, let's shift to talking about the tournament next. So let's just do a quick event recap and give our initial thoughts on how the event went. I know we'll be talking about that in detail with Val next week. So just like your 1,000-foot overview, a few sentences on how you feel it all was. Kicking it off with Andrew. Oh, I think you're muted, buddy.
You are correct. Overall, I think it went pretty well. It was super tightly ran. Shane, who was the TO for the event, was like on top of everything. Super quick with rules questions. There didn't seem to be any real hiccups. The only one was sort of outside the venue's control. I guess day 2 there was a marathon in town, so that kind of prevented people from arriving on time on the Sunday, but they just kind of pushed back the starting time by about half an hour and seemed to solve all those issues. So overall I think the event was super well ran. And yeah, just good TOing and everything. I don't really have anything negative to say about the event at all.
Awesome. And Ryan, what about your thoughts?
I'm going to echo what Andrew said. It was very smooth. The venue was good. There was, once we figured out where it was, there was, a lot of food nearby, which was helpful. The only downside, which is also completely out of their control, is that it decided to be 25 degrees in October, and we were in like an industrial dance studio with no ventilation of any type. But I don't think anyone was planning for that to happen.
Fair.
But no, like Shane and Val did a great job of keeping everything organized. Like, uh, the players were all quite chill. I think I only had to ask Shane a question once in 5 games, and he had an answer in like 2 seconds. It was great.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I definitely agree with the both of you there. Like, it was a great event. I'm just super happy to have had the opportunity to attend. I played 5 great opponents. Everything was run quite well. I enjoyed all my matches, which is also like super important, obviously. And then, despite us getting a little bit worked up before the event on the fact and tournament pack, it all ran super smoothly. So it was fantastic. Um, Shifting a little bit to talk about some of the results. I'm sure many of our listeners have sort of already seen on BCP how the event unfolded. Our podium turned out to be Chaos Warriors in first and second places, followed by Beastmen in third. And then the top 5 was rounded out by a Bretonia and a Tomb King list. So, yeah, I guess my initial thoughts on all of that is that I think the placings are generally quite representative of the meta at this event rather than the game overall. I mean, we had like 40% of the field that was dominated by Warriors of Chaos and High Elves, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that Warriors of Chaos won. I don't want to do like a I told you guys they were going to win type situation, but I mean, it was kind of predictable. There was a ton of really good Warriors of Chaos lists that were present. And like ultimately the combination of Chaos Lord on Dragon, what is effectively a level 5 caster with the Infernal Puppet, a bunch of Dragon Ogres, and some Forsaken is just straight up excellent and is going to carry somebody to the podium. So there's that. And I think like beyond just that local sort of, I don't know if it's the Toronto or Southern Ontario meta. The fact that Toon Kings and Bretts also made it to the top 5 just goes to show like that those factions are doing well, as we all know, and it's a good reflection of their like overall power level. So in general, not too surprised. And yeah, I guess those are my thoughts. Does that all make sense to you, Andrew?
Yeah, for the most part. Like, again, I feel it's less the lists that got those players podiums, was more the quality of the player's skill. It's not like a good list isn't just gonna make you win. So like, it obviously it was a good list, or like the good list that got them there, but they also played it very well. And you know, if another player was piloting those lists, they might have not gotten the same results. So like, I don't want to
Yep.
stir up that hyperbole of like, oh, Bretts are the best or Warriors are the best because they have XYZ units. It's like, well, yes, they have good tools, but you need to actually be a good player to do anything with those tools, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're totally correct in that there was 10 Warriors of Chaos players, for instance. Most of them had quite similar lists and they didn't podium. And then the guy who did come in second had a very different list with Wolves of the Sea and did manage to podium. So yeah, I think you're bang on there, Andrew. What about you, Ryan?
You actually just stole my point, but I was basically going to say something to the same effect, which was that even though it looks like it's Warriors of Chaos, Beastmen, it's two wildly different to the point of barely being related Warriors of Chaos lists.
Yeah.
And then Beastmen, and then the Bretonian list that looks a lot like the Bretonian list I would have built if I had time to paint the rest of my Bretonians.
Fair.
But also looks like his army looks almost nothing like 2/3 of the other Bretonian armies that showed up.
Yeah.
So like there's a huge amount of variety even across like the top 10, like even the two Tomb Kings that made it to the top 10, Charlotte and Cleary. Yeah, they're both mortuary cults, but they're very different spins on mortuary cults. They're different. I honestly found the High Elves got same year, but they also have fewer options to use,
Yeah.
which does that. But anyway, so I thought it was a very healthy representation of, yes, it's skewed by both the skill of the people using the armies and what people chose to bring, but there's a deep amount of variety to what trickled to the top of the list, especially when you compare it to something like the top 5 at Nova or LGT, where it was
Agreed.
almost like copy paste, copy paste, copy paste of the same armies.
Yeah, agreed. And no, I think you're also bang on. I guess the point high elves getting back to them, there were a ton of high elves at this tournament, like way more than I've seen anywhere else. And I guess I kind of echo your comments. They do get a little bit samey, unfortunately. There's probably like some room for growth in terms of that army book when it comes out. I mean, once you're past the awesomeness that is a Star Dragon, then there's not much left really compared to some of the other books out there. But
Maximum Sun Dragon.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah, okay, cool. So that was sort of our overall take on it. Let's talk little bit more about our individual performances. So first things first, let's talk about individual performance. How did you do? Did you meet your objectives that you'd set for yourself heading into the event? And like your just overall sort of performance and result there. Let's kick it right back to you, Ryan.
Okay, so I won 2 games. I lost 3. My losses were all interesting. Um, like, so anyway, all of the games were fantastic, and you know, I won a couple of them. But as we'll get into in the recap section, there were certainly some like interesting circumstances that turned what could have been a quite competitive game into just I roll dice and die. But we'll get into that later.
Fair. Yeah, I think we've all got a few war stories to tell after this event. Um, on my end, I guess first things first is mission success. So I came very close to fumbling this at the 5 yard line, but I did manage to win and walk away with the top legacy faction award, which is what I was shooting for. So I'm super happy about that. Another really cool thing that happened over the weekend is I came in 6th for like the overall score, which is sort of your combined gains result, your painting scores, and your sportsmanship, which feels really cool. And then I finished 3-2, so I didn't quite make it to the 4-1 I wanted to. Unfortunately, it was definitely within reach, and as you guys will hear later, I fumbled a few things that sort of brought me back down into that 3-2 realm. I really wish I could replay those 2 losses. It's totally my fault, but anyways, we'll talk about that in a bit more detail later. How did your overall event go, Andrew?
Good. I went 3-2, so I did better than sort of my goal of 2-1. Um, I didn't place as high overall. Um, but I did come in 12th in like the standing, so I'm pretty stoked about that. Other than that, like I don't know, I had good games that we'll get into more detail later. And I have no complaints. I'm happy with how I did, especially with Dark Elves.
And you brought basically all of the terrain for the event, so that's also something to
I
highlight.
brought a lot of terrain, yes.
Okay, so that's our performance. Andrew, can you just give us a quick overview, like the Cole's note of your list and what you brought to the event?
Yeah, so I brought Dark Elves, which is one of the legacy factions. It has a Dark Elf Dreadlord on a Black Dragon. He has the Sword of Might and a Pendant of Caleth, which is sort of like a 2-tier ward save. Then I took a Witch Elf Hag with the Ogre Blade and I think it's Rune of Cain or Cry of Cain or something, which gives her D3 extra attacks on top of her Frenzy, so potentially up to 7 attacks. And then I took a Dark Elf Sorceress, level 4, with a few magic items, Lore Familiar, and the 5-up ward save. And she took Battle Magic, which was definitely the right call. It gave me a lot of extra ranged damage dealing that my list hasn't had in the past, and it was like super. Like she was clutch in almost every game. So that was awesome. Then in core, I took Witches, which the Hag unlocks as core as opposed to special. There's 20 of those with full command, and the Banner of Hargan F, which is a +1 armor piercing to their attacks. And they have 3 attacks apiece with poison attacks. So the idea is to just dump a lot of poison out the front of the unit, and hopefully the AP carries them through because they're only strength 3. So if I am having to roll 2 wound, likely not going to happen that reliably. Then I had 2 units of 5 Dark Riders with a champion and a musician. They had light armor and shields, cavalry spears, and repeater bolt throwers. And then I paid to upgrade them to have fire and flee, and also scout. Then I had a cold one chariot, a Charybdis, and 6 cold one knights with full command, and the standard of slaughter, I believe it's called, which on a turn that they charge, it adds D3 combat res to their combat res at the end.
Awesome. I know before Ryan jumps in here, I know that you were sort of hemming and hawing about your Lore of Magic choice. Are you happy with, was it Battle Magic?
Yeah, so I was really happy with Battle Magic. Since forever, I've played Dark Elves. I've almost exclusively used Demonology to a point that I thought it was like a crutch. But I'm glad I didn't take it for this tournament because just being able to, with the Lore Familiar, I was able to take Pillar of Fire and Fireball, which is just a crazy amount of damage it can put out. And Pillar of Fire is kind of stupid broken, being able to choose the direction that the pillar moves and just kind of like bounce it through whole lines of armies. So yeah, she did very well. And Fireball was just good, like anti-chaff. It was kind of foolish how good it was.
Just a good set of spells there. Like Pillar of Fire is certainly contentious right now in the community, but I'm happy this all worked out for you. Sorry, so Ryan, your list, what are you saying?
I'm just going to start now. So I had Bretonnian Exiles. I had a Baron on a Royal Pegasus with Virtue Knightly Templar and the Frontier Axe. I had a Damsel. She was level 2 and had Battle Magic and the Flame Strike Wand, so she always had level 3 Fireball. And then an Outcast Wizard with he was level 3 Elementalism, the Prayer Icon of Quenelles for a 27-inch dispel range, and the Falcon Horn of You Can't Fly Now. And he was on a horse. Somehow this guy got Plague of Rust, Wind Blast, and Earthen Ramparts in all 5 games. Like, I have no idea how this occurred. I just rolled dice and I got those 3 spells every time, which was just fantastic.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then I had 2 units of 6 Mounted Knights of the Realm with full command, 2 units of 6 Mounted Yeomen with full command, and shields and light armor and feigned flight and every upgrade under the sun, 12 Peasant Bowmen, 5 Pegasus Knights with the banner that lets them Vanguard move, 2 units of Squires with Fire and Flee and Scouts, 2 Border Prince's Bombards, and my Border Prince's Brigands. There were 10 of them. They had blunderbusses, there were skirmishers and an ambush, and the Desperado had the Ruby Ring of Ruin. And they didn't manage to come in before turn 5 ever for the entire event.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes. Okay. On my end, so it's the list that you've all heard me discuss in the past. So I won't belabor it too much. 3 characters. I did take my Chaos Dwarves, of course. So 3 characters. The Sorcerer Prophet, level 4 with Elementalism. A Black Orc War Boss on Wyvern, just with a great weapon and all the defensive upgrades. And then I had the Hobgoblin Khan on Wolf with the Ruby Ring, who is an absolute hero all tournament, running around just being annoying and never dying. In core, I had 2 units of 13 Infernal Guard with great weapons, as well as a small unit of 5 Black Orcs with great weapons as a bit of a tax to bring the character unit. I then had 2 Iron Demons and upgraded, of course, and then rounded off the list with a trio of Bolt Throwers, who are actually really good at locking up my backfield to prevent ambushers or scouts, and then just plinking damage from across the table on stuff. So that's my list. I guess I'll go first. I'll just keep rolling with it and roll right into my game 1. So we rock up to the tournament. Game 1, I place into Christian and his Beastman. His list included the auto take level 4 Shaman with Hagtree Fetish, Doom Bull with a big unit of Gores, several units of Dragon Ogres. I think it was 2 with a Shartak and another lone guy or something. A pair of Minotaurs. So overall, it's a tough list, of course, but Beastman is a good matchup for Chaos Dwarves, so I was pretty comfortable walking into this one. So I mean, I've played this matchup a lot into Beastman, and the game plan tends to really look quite similar from one game to the next into this kind of list. So 3 big things that were sort of evident to me when I rocked up to this game is the first one. As per usual in this case, the Viletide caster needs to die as priority number 1. With that, about that in my list that's typically done through shooting. The most critical thing, however, is that the Viletide caster isn't able to cast said spell on the Black Orc War Boss. That may one-shot him, and he's really a key piece specifically in this matchup. So deployment is like key to make sure that doesn't happen. And especially my War Boss needs to be over 36 inches away from the Shaman to be safe, like from turn 2 Viletide. So that's the most important thing in this matchup. The second thing that I really wanted to focus on, looking at the game from the get-go, was that my Wyvern needed to land into that big brick of Gores with the Doom Bull. It's going to win that fight pretty handily when I start declaring challenges, and it's just going to pick up a lot of points there. The last thing, and sort of to my game plan, looking at the match, was that I wanted to deploy deep in my zone to leverage my shooting advantage as the fairly slow Beastman army rolled in from across the board. So that was the plan. And how did it go? The answer is disastrously is how it went. So I was unable to put that plan into action. So I deployed right according to plan, and I was pretty confident. However, Christian deployed his Shaman right in front of my Wyvern, which was always going to happen because he had way fewer drops than I did. And then he gets first turn, which is no biggie because the Shaman can't march more than 14 inches, and it would still be out of range from my Wyvern. So my opponent says, "Yep, I've got Travel Mystical Pathways. I'm gonna cast that," and I'm like, "Cool, that's just still a 12-inch move." And it turns out I learned a grave mistake that I've been playing Travel Mystical Pathways completely wrong for the last 50 or so games that I've taken it. And it doesn't involve, putting a unit wholly within 12 of where it started, but a unit within 12 of where it started, which means that it can obviously go further than 12 inches. And boy, oh boy, did that make a difference in this match. So he basically moved this Shaman up 16 inches. Cool. I had some flex range for the Wyvern. It was still well out of range, but with a 16-inch Travel Mystical Pathways move, he ended up being just in range of my Black Orcs to Viletide them. He killed the unit, and then it caused a trigger, triggered a panic test in my Black Orc War Boss, who failed that on a leadership 9. And then I was like, okay, cool. I fall back in good order. I'm 5 inches from the board edge. I should be fine. And then, of course, I rolled a 6, so my Black Orc War Boss flees turn 1, which is rough. A bit of a, it's going to be rough to win the game after that. Borderline impossible given the matchup. I was maneuvering after that to try and save things. I could have made some progress later on in the game when I teleported my Iron Demon right in front of the Shaman and got like 2 turns of solid shooting. That should have done it, but I flubbed those rolls pretty hard. Didn't kill the Shaman. He kept piling on Vile Tides all game, and then eventually got his brick with the Doom Bowl right into my Iron Demon. Which is a terrible fight, and he eventually managed to kill one up. As I said, kept racking some Vile Tides in, and then eventually I lost the game 16-4, so pretty handily there. In terms of highlights, I did have one, Iron Demon charge a unit of Dragon Ogres that was Plague of Rusted and flattened it entirely. The choo-choo train did like 11 wounds charging in, so charging in with the stomps and everything, which was yikes on the other side. In terms of improvements, I mean, like, now that I know how Travel Mystical Pathways works correctly, I would have calculated my deployment differently and not got Volatile off the board turn 1. And I mean, at that point, it would have been a completely different game. So beyond that, I mean, it's tough to comment what would have been like an absolutely different game. So that's it for my game 1. Over to you, Ryan.
Yes. So my game 1 was into the infamous Slayer army, being run by Jeffrey, the event's best sportsman. So it was an interesting army. You had Ungrim. It was obviously a royal clan. 2 demon slayers and 3 doom seekers, 2 big bricks of slayers, and a dwarf cart. So basically what happened was he just dropped his entire army in a corner behind a hill with all of the doom seekers and demon slayers, who, if you kill them, don't give up points, as a screen. And of course, this is very well telegraphed to me because he had 4 drops and I have like 11.
Yeah.
And basically, I had a choice, start of the first thing, of, do I want a fun and engaging game, but I'll probably lose because he will force me to fight the Doomseekers? Or do I want the most boring 45-minute game of Warhammer ever and basically guarantee a draw by refusing the flank he deployed on and just sitting in the other corner of the table, flinking cannon shots at him? I chose violence because it's more fun, but that also means that I lost 3-17 because I killed everything in his army except Ungrim. And not gonna lie,
points. Yeah.
like, there is nothing more Warhammer hilarious than functionally tabling your opponent and still losing because your opponent's goal in life is to die. So I thoroughly enjoyed that game, and I have no ill regard to the outcome of it, because I honestly feel like I would have hated myself if I was trying to recap a game right now where all I said was, he deployed in the corner, I deployed in the other corner, both of us passed for 5 turns, and then we went and had lunch at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Fair.
How about you, Andrew?
I played a Bretonian player. I have his name here in a second. Jordan Tideman. He had he was playing Bretonians, also Exile, so he had 2 cannons, a couple blocks, small blocks of peasant archers, a bigger block of the fancy Ryan, what are those guys called for your faction?
Oh,
Not
Yeoman
the peasants,
Guard?
but the good
The
ones.
better, yeah. Yeoman
The
Guard.
better ones, and he had the 3 or the 2 sergeants in it. Then he had a block of peg knights with his general on also a peg, but the fancier peg that lets him join. And then like 1 or 2 triangles of some form of knight. I don't know Bretonnians that well, and I can't bring up his list anymore because BCP locked me out of the list. Anyways, so I was kind of worried because there's, good shooting, so my dragon has to be careful from the cannons. The pegs with the general, who's a fighty general, also is probably going to walk through a lot of my army. And just the high armor on the knights means that like I'm going to have a hard time cracking them, even with, like the witches with their +1 AP. And he has counter charge, so if I try to charge with my cold ones, he's going to be able to charge me as well, and it'll be kind of like a mutually assured destruction thing. Anyways, I deployed my Charybdis on my left flank, and then sort of my knights, witches, and my 2 scouting calves sort of in front of his. He had a hill in his deployment zone, so he put his 2 cannons on it, and then a big line of archers in front. So my plan with the Dark Riders and the Dragon was to rush that hill and just wipe it off the board, which they got luck. The Dark Riders got lucky and shot a lot of those damn peasants off, and then the Dragon ended up charging 1 cannon and then fighting off the next one. On my left flank, the pegs charged my Charybdis and did 6 wounds, so he killed both the handlers on the Charybdis, and 4 of its 5 wounds remained, which dead to rights that Charybdis should have died, but he rolled kind of poorly and didn't do enough wounds to kill it. So the Charybdis killed his general with the killing blow attack. The general failed the ward save, so that was a lot of combat res right there. Yeah, I just got stupid lucky on that flank. Like that Charybdis should have been dead, but he just rolled bad, and I got the killing blow on the general. The 4 other attacks killed maybe 1 or 2 more pegs, and then Stomps killed another one. So at the end of it, he had 1 peg left who actually fled from the Charybdis, and that was kind of his like Death Star unit. So at that point, it was more of like a cleanup crew. He still got like quite a few points off me. Like I think he killed the Charybdis in the end. My chariot died, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, like once he lost that big unit, it was kind of, I had more free reign to kind of play around with what was left on the table. And it ended up being let me see here. It ended up being a 13-7 in my favor.
Cool. Do you think
but like,
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you think that Brett's is a good matchup for you as Dark Elves, or in general, or did you just get like super lucky type situation?
A little bit of both. Like, they're a hard matchup in terms of they're fast, which is kind of my strength. Is like I can pick my fights, but they're the counter to that because they're also very quick and can do so. And they have very high armor. Like they're not super tough. Like I think even like their regular knights are only toughness 3, right?
Yeah.
But it's just trying to crack them out of that armor, and usually they're hitting first on the charge. Maybe not so much against elves because we just have such high initiative plus an additional bonus initiative on the first turns of combat. But yes, it is. Typically, I would say it's a hard matchup for me. But it's not an unwinnable matchup. It's just like I can't get complacent with my moves and stuff. Like I have to kind of figure out what I'm doing and do it properly. Otherwise, yeah, it can go south really quickly. But this game, honestly, like I'm gonna attribute it to just dumb luck on that Pegasus art charge because there's no way that Charybdis should have lived through that. But yeah, he survived with 1 wound and just went like full crazy on them.
Amazing. That's cool. Okay, so rolling into my game 2. So after getting crushed by Beastman, I roll into Beastman again. So this is interesting because it's a similar list. So I rolled into Dan. Dan, the differences between this one and Christian's list before is that he had 2 level 4 Valtide casters, so even more fun there. Also had a big block of Gores, also had Dragon Ogres, and he replaced the Doom Bull with like a gigantic spawn, essentially, is how that worked out. And then he had some chaff. The This is interesting because the game played out very differently than my last one. So it was open battle on Mountain Pass. And essentially my game plan was the same. Like I was not deterred by the fact that it failed miserably game one. I rolled Rockton, thinking I would do the same thing for game two. So that's, firstly ensure that the Valtide caster with the fetish dies is priority number one. Secondly, use my Wyvern to pick up points into the big gore brick, the dragon ogres, and the spawn as I can win all those fights. And then lastly, deploy deep in my zone to leverage my shooting advantage while the slow sort of beastman mob walks in. This is made easier in this case by the fact that we were playing a mountain pass style map, so the beastman player Dan had even further to walk to get to me. How it went, I spoiled it earlier, but it went very well. And I think this is like a cool example for people following at home that if you have a plan and you follow through with it, it can result that like it pays off and it can result in a big win. So understanding the game state, your pathway to victory, and following through with your plan are definitely like they pay dividends basically. So I deployed deep according to plan. I was able to keep the Wyvern outside of Valtide range this time, and really leverage my shooting as the opponent closed in. So by turn three, Dan had lost half his army and basically all of his chaff. His chariots were all dead, and so was his gigantic spawn. I was unfortunately unable to maneuver into position to get the kill on his casters or his gores, though, which ended up causing me to leave a lot of points at home in the end. But it was a big win. So in terms of highlights, there was this really funny moment in turn three. Dan realized that he wasn't going to be able to kill anything in my army really, and he was just like it's a bit of a turkey shoot. So I'm standing there looking at the board intently, and then he asked me, he's like, "How much of my movement is it going to take for me to turn these dragon ogres around?" I'm like, "Yeah, like half their movement." And he says, okay. And then he turns his dragon ogres around 180. And I'm thinking, why is he doing that? I don't understand. I have no units behind him. Like we're fighting on the long side of the table, so it's not like this gets him anywhere faster. And then I see him do the same thing and turn that big brick of gore around. And then I'm like, is he walking away? And in fact, he did. He turned around turn three and he walked the other half of his army away up the board from me. And which was the tactically correct move, I guess, to save points, but was definitely a first. I've seen people hold back or run a damaged unit off, but pull the entire army out of the fight was interesting. I don't have a lot of improvements to like on my end. I mean, I'm very happy with how I played this. I visualized things well and I pulled it off cleanly. So, I mean, if I were to play this game again, I'd play it the exact same way. So it's all good there. And I had a lot of fun with Dan. It was a good match. So that's it for me.
Cool. So my round two was into Orcs and Goblins, run by Andrew, who is up from Pittsburgh. I think one of the furthest people away from Toronto that I was aware of being there. So he had a Black Orc Big Boss on foot and another one on a Wyvern. And then he had two Weird Boys. One Weird Knob and one Weird Boy, level 4 and a level 2. Then he had a rectangle of Black Orcs and a couple Orc mobs, which some of them were kitted out as like archers. So it's kind of like, it's almost like an inverse version of the Goblin army, where like he had Orcs and then he had lesser Orcs doing archery and stuff like that.
Sure.
More Black Orcs, 2 Bolt Throwers, Doom Diver, a Giant, and Goblin Rock Thrower. Basically, as you said, we're playing Mountain Pass. Basically, he deployed all his war machines on a hill on one side of his deployment zone, and then kind of got choked out by his deployment and had, orcs with warbows, screening units of black orcs and orcs, and his wyvern wound up like behind his entire army because there was nowhere else to put it. And unfortunately, what wound up happening was,
The
you know,
falcon horn.
yes. First off, the falcon horn turned off fly. Secondly, so his wyvern just couldn't move for the entire, like, couldn't do anything. And then the Pegasus Knights, like, pushed up the right hand flank with their vanguard move, charged the hill with all the war machines on it, slaughtered the war machines, you know, reformed into a lance facing kind of behind and into the flank of his army. And then to make matters worse, I broke one of those units of orc archers, who then ran through another unit of boys, panicked them. That unit ran off the table. The wizards died. Just cascading orc system failure. Um, and that was all like turn 1 and 2. And then the rest
Nice.
of the game was just waves of cavalry bodies slamming into black orcs from every conceivable direction. So it was a very fun game, lovely and engaging, but it was very one-sided from very early between the terrain, the mission, the falcon horn, the inability of the orcs to react to the threat basically just teleporting behind them. And also, I think it was turn 2, he rolled the miscast result on his first spell that prevented him from casting any other spells for the rest of the turn, which definitely did not help. So, yeah. So overall, great game. It was a 20-0 for the Bretonians. But it was a bit of a mushroom-themed bloodbath.
Yeah. The I guess listening to that and something that I've seen in a lot of the games I've played also is sometimes the hill becomes a bit of a trap and a bit of a magnet when people pack a few war machines. They just want to ensure, they must have line of sight at all times, so they put them on the hill and then they end up painting themselves into a literal corner for this game anyways. And if your opponent has the mobility or the movement tricks to get around that screen and into those war machines, then it just becomes, like you mentioned, a sort of cascading set of failures as you win one combat, overrun into the next war machine, win a combat on their turn, overrun into a third war machine, and it's just a bit of a shit show after that. Yeah.
I actually multi-charged something for the first time since this game came out, where I just
So
took the Pegasus Knights and I'm like, I'm charging all of these war machines at once.
I had my first multi-charge a few weeks ago, and it was exactly the same scenario. It was two side-by-side cannons on a hill, exactly as you just mentioned. So, um, word to the wise out there. Okay, so Andrew, over to you.
Yeah, so my second game was against a guy named Andy Rogers. He was running High Elves. Just off the top of my head, he had a block of Sword Masters with a level 4 High Magic Wizard in there. He had a Tyrannok Chariot, two, 5 packs of their Magic Bow ladies, and then a bigger one of 10 with his general, who is the bow lady character. I forget their names. The ones with the magic
Sisters and
shooting
a
bows.
handmaiden. Yeah.
Yeah, so the handmaiden was his general in a big block of sisters. Then he had 2 smaller 5 packs of sisters, all as skirmishing shooting characters. He had one 5-man squad of Silver Helms, 2 squads of 5 Illyrian Reavers, and he had a level 4 Shadow Mage on a Lion Chariot. And that Shadow Mage was running, it's like the White Sword or something. Basically, it's like a heroic killing blow sword, and what he was doing was getting doppelganger and using it to try to bully dragons and big monsters around. As stated before, we played Mountain Pass, and I had this big like tower building on the edge of my deployment zone. So originally my plan was to deploy all around this tower to try to mitigate some of the range attacks, and I sent my Dark Riders on one flank towards his Silver Helms and Illyrian Reavers. And then my Charybdis, Dark Riders, and Cold One Knights went on his, I guess, my left flank towards him, and that was against a pack of sisters, his wizard on the chariot, and another chariot. His wizard on the chariot, again, the Charybdis, survived all the odds, so it charged in on the Charybdis. He tried to use Doppelganger to get a bunch of extra attacks on the Charybdis to just kill it right out. He didn't get the 6, didn't even really wound it. And the Charybdis swung back and took almost all of its wounds away. And then on the following turn, it killed his level 4 wizard on the chariot. He was casting a lot of Walk Between Worlds, I think is the high elf spell, on his Swordmaster block with the wizard in it to keep them ethereal all game, so I couldn't really touch them. On the right flank, my 5 Dark Riders shot off all 5 Silver Helms and all 5 Illyrian Reavers. Like, I've never done that well with ballistic skill shooting in my life. Like, he couldn't roll a save to save his life. And they shot off 2 units over like 4 turns. But then the sisters made short work of them after the fact. And then eventually he got... Oh, yeah, that's right. He had a BSB on a Griffin. So what he did was he got my witch unit sort of out in the middle of the board. He charged in the front with the Swordmasters and in the back with his BSB and just basically wiped the unit. At that point, he had Vols Unmaking, my ward save on the Wizard, my ward save on the Dragon, and my Ogre Blade on the Hag. So they were just completely dead. I ended up pulling my Sorceress way back off the board so she wouldn't get shot. And my Dragon, after killing, I think, the Chariot and some other piece of chaff he had, he just had a hard time locking down the sisters. Like, they kept either evading when I tried to shoot at them or just like moving at weird angles so I wouldn't be able to get good charges with my Dragon. Anyways, the game was very close until the end. Like, once the witches died, it was kind of game over for me. Like, he had whittled down. I think he got the Charybdis eventually with just like mass shooting from his sisters. My Cold One Knights were like basically down to like 1 or 2 models, and he eventually killed off like all my chaff. So at the end, I basically had like my Dragon and my Pegasus Wizard left. And it ended up being a 12-8 win for him. So I lost.
Still a pretty tight game, though, and it sounds like the Charybdis is already shaping up to be the MVP in the list.
Him or the Sorceress. Like, I don't remember all the specifics of like how great the Sorceress was, but like every game I came out of it thinking like, holy fuck, did she ever do good? Like, just fireballs and using the movement spell they have, I forget the name of it, to just like push
Travel
my witches
mystical
up.
pathways. Yeah. Oh no, sorry,
That's the
it's
one.
Arcane
No, that's not
Urgency.
it.
Arcane Urgency.
Yeah, the double move one, just to like get the witches right up in my opponent's face when they get too close, because then they're like, oh, I didn't realize they would be that fast, and now I have to either charge into this thing and probably not go first regardless, or try to find a way to get out of the way of these witches. Like, it's such a good ability to get them where I want them, and it helps me sort of negate their frenzy, being able to get like frenzy baited, because it's like, okay, we're getting to that point where maybe next turn I am going to have to roll to check for friend, or to roll, or to charge due to frenzy. So it's like, well, might as well just full send the witches now and put them like an inch away from like the front of the unit I want them to fight. So like, yeah, I will frenzy charge, but it's where I want them to charge anyway. So um that's really helpful. So yeah, the Charybdis, I think the main thing is people super underestimate its abilities, and it's surprisingly tanky because of the janky way that the monster and handler rule is written. It's basically like kind of like a built-in ward save, essentially.
Sure.
Not like 100%, but I'd rather lose one of the stupid handlers than to take a wound on the actual monster, which does all the work.
Yeah.
So it does survive more than maybe its stats would suggest because of that rule. And people just don't expect it to be, 4 strength 7 AP, 2 poison attacks, and a killing blow attack on top of that, plus stomps. Like, it's just, people are like, oh, some dumb monster. It's like, yeah, but it hits like a truck.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, so rolling into my game three. Game three, we were back to open battle. I was matched into Keith and his high elves. Keith was rocking a Sun Dragon. That's the impetuous Strength and Toughness 5 dragon. He had a level 4 caster on a chariot. 20 sisters with a handmaiden in a big blob, a pair of sky cutters, some silver helms, and dragon princes. So just looking at the lists, I knew that this was going to be an extremely difficult matchup for Keith. He didn't have a single instance of strength 6 in his army. And when he rolled into a high toughness skew list, as I've mentioned ad nauseum during our Chaos Dwarf episode there, it made the match borderline unwinnable for him. For me, like an elite T3 army is basically my natural prey. So Keith was in for a bit of a hard ride there. He maneuvered well though to work around my line, and he did manage to threaten some of my weaker pieces, which was definitely good on him. So rocking up to the table and looking at how the game is shaking out, I come up with a quick game plan. This one's not too complicated given the sort of matchup. Sometimes it doesn't need to be very complicated. So the first priority is Iron Demons go burr, basically. Utilize the fact that all my shooting basically wounds his army on a 2+ and can just pick things up. I was happy rolling into a shooting match with my Wyvern just picking up random odds and sods and just letting the shooting do the work aside from that. The second sort of aspect of the game plan was that I wanted to deal with the Sun Dragon early, either through shooting because it's only toughness 5, or through a Wyvern charge, which is going to absolutely mulch it, so that after that I didn't need to worry about it given the matchup. And then the third thing is I wanted to prevent his cavalry and skycutters from outflanking me and sort of running around the line and just getting into my artillery and becoming annoying and pulling off multiple unit charges on using their high mobility. How did it go? So I didn't effectively manage to follow my plan. I expected Keith to play cautious and cagey, given that he was at both a disadvantage in terms of shooting as well as close combat. However, he decided he was going to play this extremely aggressively, which in hindsight was not a terrible way to approach this. And then he seized the initiative early by just charging everything. Since his army was basically all in from the get-go, I decided to have the Wyvern charge and run down the big unit of 20 sisters with the handmaiden, as those were like the easiest points to pick up, and I didn't want them shooting all game at my army because I was engaged fighting something else. And then the Iron Demons just became like immovable bricks for a big portion of his army to charge into. Keith definitely effectively outmaneuvered me, and he forced me to scramble quite a bit to react. Using travel mystical pathways, which I had now learned the proper use of, to sort of plug holes every turn, and then just scramble. It allowed, I did manage to pull it all together, and it was a pretty convincing win. At the end, the High Elves just had a Skycutter left on the board. In terms of some of the highlights, there was this weird funny situation where to save my sorcerer prophet from getting charged by the outflanking dragon, I needed to teleport a brick of infantry away, which left the sort of sorcerer prophet open to a long bomb charge from his dragon princes to the rear through difficult terrain. Of course, they went max charge, powered through the difficult terrain, and hit and charged the sorcerer prophet. So my general. I proceeded to challenge the unit champion, and then they had like a wet noodle fight for like 5 rounds of combat. So the dragon princes were unable to do like a single wound to my magician, basically, until the rest of my army was able to join. And then Keith rolled something dumb like 25 armor saves in a row for those dragon princes. So by that point, everything on the other side was dead, essentially. My entire army was wailing on these silly dragon princes, which were all like down to 5-up saves, basically. And he just kept making all the 5-up saves, which at some point just got hilarious because it was so wild. And then other highlight is Keith basically decided to rock my world mid game. I was zoning out late in game 3 because it was a long day, and he decided to accompany his handmaiden of the Everqueen by pulling out the fucking Horn of Gondor and blowing it when she passed her leadership test for the Horn of Isha. Come to think of it, it probably rocked the world of everybody around us because like all the tables were turning around. So that was a pretty interesting and impromptu moment in our game there. In terms of mistakes and improvements, definitely my deployment was poor in this game. I feel like I got overconfident because of list advantage, and I deployed too aggressively when facing an army that was so much more mobile than mine. Uh, I've played this a lot. Like I know that the right move, thinking back on it, would have been a much more defensive deployment style to prevent Keith from seizing the initiative and exploiting his high mobility. So definitely that's a point for me to take as like, simmer down there. You've got the advantage on list construction, but the game's not won yet type situation. So that's that for my game 3. Over to Ryan.
Hello. So I just need to correct 2 things from my previous statement.
Sure.
My game with the dwarfs was a 14-6 for the Slayers, and my game against orcs was an 18-2 for me. I was reading my scores out of order. Anyway, game 3 was against Timur and his Tomb Kings. Not gonna lie, as I described this game, it's going to sound embarrassing for me. So he had his high priest on foot, nice level 4 high priest, and he had his Tomb King on a dragon with just stuff. He had 2 units of 10 skeleton archers, a unit of 5 skeleton horse archers, 20 tomb guard in a rectangle, 2 tomb swarms, 2 carrion, 2 units of 1 tomb scorpion, 3 Ushabti with the ritual blades, a casket of souls, a necrolith colossus, and a screaming skull catapult. Firstly, I don't think he had a necrolith colossus even like with him that day, so that thing just never appeared in the game at all. And then he forgot the 2 tomb scorpions existed. So they never showed up either.
Yeah, bit of a rough start.
Yes. And what you did fail to mention is, yes, we were playing open battle, but it was open battle with the deployment from Vanguard.
Yeah.
So it was diagonal with a 12-inch gap between armies. So being the cavalier player that I am, I deployed on the line. For some reason, he also did that. And I got the first turn. So it just turned into like the start of the game is basically just knights smashing into the carrion, the tomb swarms, all of the various archers and horse archers and things of that nature, and just like re-murdering all of those things and returning them to to the ground from whence they came. And my squires were just doing annoying things in the backfield, shooting the screaming skull catapult and stuff. And then, things aren't looking great. I'm really putting pressure onto his army. The falcon horn's going off, so the dragon's kind of like stuck behind his lines. So his first turn push back against me doesn't go great. Second turn, smash into the dragon with a unit of knights and the Pegasus Knights and my general. Start kind of dismantling the Ushabti on one flank, doing all sorts of things. The dragon takes a bunch of wounds. Like at one point, it was down to like 3 wounds. It was a thing. My opponent got quite frustrated with the game state, but like not in a bad way. He was a lovely person throughout, but he legitimately contemplated just quitting the game in turn 2 because of how overwhelmingly poorly it was going for him. And then his half of turn 2 starts, and I lose the ability to roll dice and start losing whole units of knights to attacks with no AP. And just terrible things. And basically on a dime, bottom of 2 through turn 3 and 4, he proceeds to table the remainder of my army because I can't hit him and can't make saves. There's no tactical explanation to how this worked out. It was literally, I need to roll dice, miscast, misfire. I need to roll a 3, rolls a 2. That was how the remainder of that game went. At which point the final result was a 17-3 in favor of the Tomb Kings. So it was just such a strange game, like that weird Kobayashi Maru moment where you can just do everything right and still lose.
Sure.
Like that's not deficiency, that's life. But
Yeah.
Are you talking
Good
about
for
that
him.
Star Trek thing?
yeah, I just went full Picard on there. Just it's
Oh
fine.
boy, here we go.
Here we go, episode 6. So good for your opponent in terms of sticking it out instead of quitting turn 2. Just personally, there's so many games where after the start of it, I was like, "Oh, this is going so poorly," and then turns out that half by surprise you win in the end. So congrats to him for definitely sticking it out there.
Yeah, the running joke was I shouldn't have let him go to the bathroom to regroup his thoughts.
Exactly. Send a buddy over to lock that place down, so he has no choice but to just wait it out. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Okay.
it was still fun. So
Yeah. Sure. It was a roller coaster of emotions.
yeah.
Okay, Andrew, your game 3.
Yeah, my game 3, I played against Cleary, who is a local player here in Ottawa. He was running Mortuary Cult with the double casket, 4 Ushabti with great bows, 2 of those snake guys, a wizard on a dragon, and then his Hierophant was on foot. 1 Screaming Skull Catapult, I think 2 Scorpions, 2 5-packs of their scout archer guys on horses, and then a big fuck off block of spearmen. I think there was something else in there. Not like it mattered. Anyways, he, as Ryan alluded to, we were playing on the diagonal deployment, which is only a foot between each deployment edge. So me thinking, hey, I'm super fast and in theory could bully a lot of this stuff other than his big magic blocks.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna rush him and hope I overwhelm his lines. Which was probably the wrong choice, because didn't even get close to him. He cast a lot of the like +1 to hit with his
Yeah.
stuff, so he started picking up a lot of my chaff. He just ground down the Charybdis like super quick before I can get to him. He did the spell that prevents me from charging, so like my witches couldn't charge, and then eventually like my dragon got close to his backfield and he just started shutting him down every turn. At one point he was like at +9 to cast magic with all like the weird buffs and stuff he had
Yeah.
on top of his level 4, so like I couldn't even like stop a lot of the spells he was casting, and he basically just dismantled me before I can even get to his lines. Yeah, honestly, I was also very hot and very tired and probably was a little salty. So Cleary, if you're listening, I'm sorry if I was kind of being a jerk. Because I was kind of like rattled facing that list and just how poorly it was going. But yeah, like I didn't do very well at all. Like I think I picked up maybe one of the scorpions and like a bit of his chaff. But it was a pretty sound beating from the mortuary cult. Like even any gains I got on him, he would just res it all back. So it's like cool. Like
Yep.
I just like blew my load trying to like even do a little bit of damage, and then the following turn, like it was all just negated. So it was just very frustrating. Um, in retrospect, I probably should have also just corner deployed in my zone and had him, dealt with whatever the Screaming Skull would have done to my army, which might have killed some stuff, but not much, and just went for like forced him to come to me if we wanted to have a fight, as opposed to just kind of like rushing his castle and hoping for the best. Um, I think it would have been at least better. Even if I lost, it would have been less of a loss. So I got a 5 to his 15 in that game. Not much to say. It wasn't very exciting. It was just kind of like I rushed, I bounced, and then he
and
killed a lot of
got
my stuff.
mortuary cult.
I got culted.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I guess this brings me into game 4. So I ended up facing Timur in game 4. So Ryan's opponent from round 3. So he was riding hot off the victory against Ryan when he rolled into me. So as I mentioned about in our Chaos Dwarf Tactica episode, generally Tomb Kings / Undead is my worst matchup. However, in this case, I was fairly confident because it was Grand Army as opposed to the Nightmare to play against that is Mortuary Cults, and my opponent only had one Bone Dragon with Tomb King and then one Casket of Souls. So I could definitely take that. I won't go over the rest of the list because Ryan has already obviously discussed it. So game plan rocking into this one is first and foremost, find a way to handle the Casket of Souls early. That unit, that piece is really game defining because it's such an incredible force multiplier with like the -1 to hit bubble and then the incredible magic missile of failure leadership test and get deleted. The answer whenever I run into this matchup is almost always the Wyvern's going to have to take care of business and go wreck that Casket of Souls. So that was, part 1 of the plan is deal with that thing. Part 2 of the plan is I need to manage those that dragon long enough to start racking up points elsewhere on the board. The unfortunately for the other armies out there, the Tomb King dragons are just rough to deal with between inbuilt regen saves, the -1 to hit at range, the -1 to hit in close combat from, or just the -1 to hit in general from the Casket of Souls. So yeah, I didn't really have much hope of killing it, frankly. So I just needed to manage its presence on the board. The third point is that, and it's often the case when I'm facing Tomb Kings, is I need to pick up points where possible by killing all the skirmishing units, the single entities like scorpions, and then just building up a lead in scoring and playing cagey after that if required when facing the unkillable stuff until I can snipe the level 4 caster, because if once you kill those, everything sort of falls apart. How did it go? So I think this game is one where my opponent lost during deployment. So Timur decided to go for a corner castling strategy on this one. And most critically, he positioned his casket and catapult, Screaming Skull catapult, before my Wyvern was down on the board. So I saw where the opening was quite early. He left a place in his bunker where I could physically fly the Wyvern over his line and into his war machines. So I changed my plan on the fly there, and I deployed the Wyvern extremely aggressively, all of his own, like on the extreme edge of the board, which is dangerous for many reasons. See my game one as a prime example. And then, secondly, there was a lot of risk here in terms of how I shifted my strategy. I powered the Wyvern up turn one on his own because I saw that opening that was like a potential game winner. And if I would have failed that charge turn two, my Wyvern would have just, landed right in front of his entire army unsupported, which would have been highly problematic. But I did pull the charge off. It was like a 13-inch charge on a Fly 9 monster, so I wasn't too concerned. I managed to charge the Casket of Souls. It exploded because his army was super densely packed. It did a ton of damage to the bunker. I then overran into his Screaming Skull catapult, and then so it was all bad news from there for Timur. So my opponent responded by reforming his army backwards like 180 degrees so that the entire bunker was facing the Wyvern. And he also used travel mystical pathways to put his bone dragon right in my face because that was the only place where it could fit. Also along the board edge. So I decided to go for the home run. I overran into the Bone Dragon after killing his catapult on his turn. And then when it came to my turn, start of turn three, I popped all the buffs. So the Black Orc declared his Wa for the extra combat res and the rerolls. He took his Potion of Toughness, and I was like, if I could just win a single round of combat, I'm pushing this thing off the board. And then, the game is I think, unrecoverable for him at that point. By that point, so I did manage to win the combat and push the dragon off the board. And by that point, my entire army was closing on what was now his rear. So yeah, there wasn't really a way for him to pull this back after that. It resulted in a convincing win for the Chaos Dwarfs. I think things would have played very differently if the deployment on my opponent's part had worked out differently. And if there wasn't a hole into which I could fit my Wyvern there. In terms of improvements, I mean, it's tough to tell. This game turned extremely quickly. I'm pretty happy with how I realized that there was like that slim opening and potential for just like a sort of home run on this one and pull it off. I wouldn't do too much differently if the situation was the same again. So overall, just a good game. My opponent also told me he really enjoyed it and it gave him a lot to think about. So I'm happy about that one. Over to you, Ryan.
So in round 4, day 2, we were playing Capture and Control, but with a hill instead of a tower. And that was against Evan with his ogre army, no think, only big.
Which is an amazing name. I'm just going to shout it out.
Fact. So we had a Tyrant on a Thunder Tusk with the Armor of Destiny. He had 4 Iron Guts. He had 9 Ogre Bulls, 2 Iron Blasters, unit of 3 Mornfang Cavalry, a Stonehorn Rider, and the Thunder Tusk Rider. So, I saw that I was paired into this, and we went home, we talked about it, and historically I've had a lot of issues with multi-wound toughness 4 in my army, because, like, Knights of the Realm units getting a whopping 6 strength 5 attacks on the charge. It's not usually gonna, wipe out too many Iron Guts, what have you.
No. Yeah, maybe you'll kill one type situation.
Exactly. With my whole 165 point unit.
Yeah.
So that was a thing. It got interesting because obviously there's a hill right in the middle of the table. And he deployed very cagily and basically against the back of the table. And when he realized I had Wind Blast, he promptly spent turn 1 moving away from the edge of the table. But basically, like, the Iron Blasters and my cannons got into like a weird shooting duel where in both cases the Iron Blasters did 2 damage to my cannons, leaving them with 1 wound, before my cannon proceeded to blow up the Iron Blaster with the help from some archers. But all in, the MVP of this game was peasants with longbows, because you just throw enough strength 3 AP -1, because they're only wounding on 6s, attacks at things, and you kill a Thunder Tusk or a Stonehorn. So it was quite unfortunate for my opponent. He wound up completely tabled, and with me holding the hill in the center of the table. So it wound up ultimately being a 20-0 for the Bretonians, as I think I lost 1 unit of knights, took negligible casualties. He tried to be a little bit cagey on the right flank with the Mournfang, so I had deployed my squires at like just at the edge of max charge distance from them, and then pushed my Pegasus knights up, expecting he would maybe try and charge, to get the advantage with his impact hits and things. He didn't do that, so the next turn I just pushed my he actually moved back so that he was outside of the Pegasus Knight's charge range. So I moved up to be 1 inch away from the Mournfangs, at which point he still didn't charge me, so I charged them, killed 2, and pushed the last one off the table. And basically the entire thing just kind of turned into a big mopping operation, as his behemoth riders were all dying to archers and cannon fire and magic, and it just kind of it was like very fun. Some super random stuff happened, but like, all things considered, I think both of like my plan was basically just full send, and it worked. It probably shouldn't have worked, but I guess, yeah, weapon skill 3 and no meaningful armor doesn't really enable toughness 4 all that much.
Fair. I think this is the karma of your poor luck on the previous game coming back.
Oh, don't worry, it gets worse in the next one,
Fun.
but we'll let Andrew talk about his game first.
Yes. So my game 4 was against another Ottawa player, Darko. He was running the Troll Horde, so he had the Troll Hag, 4-man units of stone trolls, a big block of goblins with one of his level 4s in there. He had 2 5-packs of goblin wolf riders, and then one of them had another goblin wizard on a wolf to go hang out with them. He had a goblin war boss on a chariot with a bow, and then 2 regular chariots. Was that his whole list? Let's just say yes. So I don't remember the whole list exactly. It was like already half a week ago, and
It's all good.
it was a lot of games. Anyways, so yeah, this was King of the Hill, or command and control, with the hill being the center objective. I was kind of worried about the ogres, rightfully so, because my army struggles against multi-wound models. Usually I'm trying to kill the front rank so I don't take a lot of damage back. But even if I hit these troll units hard, chances are I'm going to be taking a lot of damage back. So what happened was I kind of pushed my dragon up alone to fight one of the troll packs. The witches went up the center at one of his 4 one of his troll packs that had the goblin block directly behind it. And then I pushed a flank with a bunch of my chaff and the wizard. It was the same flank that one of his wolf riders and the wizard on the wolf rider was also on. I cast a lot of fireballs and pillar of fire, and it did quite a lot of damage to the trolls. I was kind of bouncing the pillar along his whole like 2 packs of trolls and the troll queen. So I chipped a few models off one unit just like over like 2 turns. The troll hag lost like 2 wounds, which is key in a moment. And yeah, the other troll pack was a little bit weakened. I rushed my cold ones into another troll pack and beat them pretty handily, but my fear came true, and they all had great weapons. So I think there's something like strength 7 AP2 on the trolls. So I did a lot of damage and won that combat, but I lost something like 3 or 4 of my cold one knights, which basically just neutered that whole unit. So maybe not worth it for that trade. My witches pushed like super tight in the middle. And he in front of them was a chariot, the troll hag, and a pack of trolls that had like lost a lot of models due to like the fireballs and the pillar. So there's only 2 left. Now, originally he had planned to multi-charge with all 3 of those things into the hag or the witch unit, which I think he should have done because that would have like definitely decimated them for sure. But instead he decided to hold the troll pack back and just charge his troll hag and the chariot in. The chariot did do a lot of damage with impact hits because witches just don't have saves. But then I challenged out his troll hag, who was the general, with my hag, with the ogre blade, and she did enough damage to basically kill it before it can swing. By like 1 wound. Like I got like the multi wounds did just enough to kill it by 1 wound. So if I rolled any less, like that troll would have been alive and would have got my hag. But because the pillar had already like chipped off like 1 or 2 wounds, like it was just enough to kill it. So I got super lucky there. And then we rolled off for timber, and it fell onto the chariot because I got to pick. So I did more damage to that and killed it as well, which was kind of funny. At that point, I was able to overrun with the witches into his goblin unit with the level 4, and the witches just turned them into a paste. But then like ran to the very edge of his board. On one flank, my wizard and dark riders had a huge like shooting and like fireball duel with his wizard, who was casting Itchy Nuisance a lot, and his wolf riders. Eventually, I came out on top, just luck and good dice rolling and blah blah blah. So I cleaned up that flank pretty good. His chariot with the goblin lord on it kind of chased my wizard away because he was rolling really good with his bow shots, and he already chipped like 2 wounds off her because she is only like toughness 3 with a 5-up ward, so it's not like she's really tanky. So I ended up just like flying her away max speed and then arcane urgencying herself the same turn to get even farther. So she was just like, okay, I'm going to the other side of the board now, just away from you. And basically she was out of the battle for that. At the end of it, I cleaned up 3 of the troll packs, his 2 regular chariots, the goblin block, all of his chaff. And I think that's it. So he had like 2 trolls on the hill, and all my stuff was sort of on the edges of the board. And I, looking at it, I was like, well, I can't really risk any of these units to go fight those trolls. Like, even though there was like 2 or 3 left, it's just too much, and I might lose those fights.
Yeah.
So I decided to just kind of hold, and he had the hill. And on like the very last turn, I rushed my my last 3 cold one knights onto the hill as well, so we were at least contesting in a way that he wouldn't have been able to get like a charge on me. Like I was kind of like to the side and behind the troll unit that was on the hill, but we were both on it. But it was like a super bloody fight. I got, lucky on some key fights that could have went either way. Like it wasn't like a guaranteed thing. And even my dragon was scared of the trolls because they were hitting toughness 7. Only have a 3-up save, so basically I'm just relying on that ward. And he'd already gotten like my dragon down to like 4 or 5 wounds left. So at that point, it's like, well, I can't just bully these troll units around with my dragon. So yeah, I just kind of stopped, and it ended up being a let me see here, a 16-4 for me in the end. But super good game. Darko's a great guy to play. Like he was, helping with some, like tactics. He's like, oh, maybe you should try this because I think it would be better. And like he was really like tight with the rules. And he's good with math, which is nice because like in the moment, like I'll roll dice and just be like, I needed something, but like he's one of those guys who's quick with it. So he's just like, oh, you need like 3s. Oh, you need 4s. Like he's good like that. So it was just like nice to play him and kind of turn off my brain a bit and just focus on tactics as opposed to like all the other like weird rules nuances and stuff.
Good for you pulling the win on this one. Like Darko's a great player. He did super well at CCBB where he was the ringer turned contender, and so yeah, sounds like it was a great game.
Yeah, it was a good game. We both played like super tight. Probably like my best game of the weekend in terms of just A, like my opponent, and B, just like thinking tactically and like making the right moves and charging the right blocks and knowing when to put the gas on and when to pull it off. So like yeah, like he played super well too. Like not like he like gave me an easy time of it. Like it was super like a hard fought win, but it was a great game.
Awesome. So rolling into my game 5, last game of the event. So after winning into Tomb King's turn 4 and being lead in the Legacy factions, I was pretty happy. I was pretty confident because most people in my bracket were like lists that I knew I would match up well against. Unfortunately, I matched up into friend of the podcast and defeater of Andrew Cleary and his mortuary called for game 5. I've played into Cleary before, and he kicked my butt last time we played, so I was not thrilled with the matchup. Here he comes to sort of wreck my winning streak. So Cleary, Andrew, you've discussed his list at length, so I'm not going to go through it too much. But essentially, it's mortuary cult with a level 4 caster on a dragon, which makes sniping out the Hierophant really difficult. He has a big block of skeletons. Sorry.
His Hierophant's the one on foot. It's not the dragon.
Oh yeah, you're right. But there's a second one. Yeah.
Because he plays more aggressive with the dragon.
Yep. Yeah, you're correct. So he did have the other level 4 on foot. A pair of Tomb Scorpions, a few Shop D, a pair of Caskets, and a Catapult. So game plan on this one. So it's a rough matchup for me. I knew this was going to be very difficult from the get-go, and it's going to be hard for me to sort of win by a lot. So I decided to take a cautious / KG approach to this matchup. Use terrain to block his line of sight and protect my important pieces to sort of save some points there. Frankly, I was hoping for a draw or a very small win on this one. And, since I was in a good position overall in the rankings, I wasn't too worried with the results. I just needed to not fumble it. Since my damage output was insufficient to kill anything that could be resurrected, because that's how a matchup into mortuary cults goes. The name of the game for me was focus on killing single entities and things that can't be resurrected while maneuvering defensively to protect points on my end. And then, of course, as like a third item, if there's an opportunity to zap the Hierophant, you always go for that. He clearly deployed way better in a more difficult way for me to handle than in my previous Tomb King game. So yeah. How did it go? Things went essentially according to plan for me. So I pulled off what I wanted to do. I played an extremely KG and defensive game of Warhammer. I think some people would say boring. which is fine. I managed to protect everything I needed for basically the whole game, so I was pretty happy with myself. Surprisingly, I did manage to kill his chaff and single entities. All the items I was aiming for. He did help me a little bit by filling a scorpion charge and leaving it stranded in the middle of nowhere, which I appreciate. Definitely clear if you're listening to this. And then I was sitting in 11-9 territory pretty late in the game, and I was pretty happy with it. So of course, I think you're hearing it from how this is going. I did manage to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory on this one. So I'd managed to contain his bone dragon effectively throughout the whole game, but Clary was able to maneuver it into position for like a late game charge at one of my infantry units. It was a super long charge, like max range charge. So I thought that fleeing was the better part of valor in this one to make sure that I could preserve the points. I rolled an enormous flee roll for dwarves, like a 12 or something, or an 11 reduced by 1. I then proceeded to fail my 9-up leadership test to rally, which should have been fine, but then decided to roll massively again on the flee, which took the unit off the board and swung the points in his favor. So again, as I mentioned, it was totally snatching defeat from the jaws of victory in a game I thought I played pretty well. I'd love to replay this game again. In terms of improvements, I think I definitely lost the game on this one. No disrespect to my opponent who played a good game, but it was mine to lose, and like I did lose it. I had the opportunity to move the Wyvern out of cover to target his backline and war machines late in the game, which would have resulted in additional points, but I decided not to take it. I figured that I was in the lead, and if I failed a leadership role against Light of Death from either of his Caskets of Souls, it was possible for him to just immediately delete a 400 point model, and I didn't want to take that risk. And that probably lost me the game ultimately. In hindsight, I should have been more aggressive at that opportunity and just jumped out of the woods or through the woods and then charged his caskets and catapult. I also managed quite late in the game to cast Travel Mystical Pathways. I opted to move a damaged Infernal Guard unit away from his lines to save points. And then with hindsight, that was also a game-losing move on this one. Had I decided to move my undamaged unit instead, the one which eventually fled off the board, that would have made the charge that he declared late in the game impossible, and I would have won it. So, yes, a Warhammer thing happened, and statistically speaking, that unit should have rallied, and it certainly shouldn't have fled twice as far as it did, and then that would have been game on my side. But ultimately, like, it was in my power to win that game in at least two different occasions before that, and I just didn't seize those opportunities. So, so that resulted in a loss. And a good game. It's always great to play against Clary. So I'm still happy overall. I wish I could replay the end of that match. So that's it for my game 5. Resulted in a 12-8 victory, I think, for Clary. So a really tight match throughout. Ryan, over to you to close your event out.
Yes. So round 5, where I get 20 0'd by High Elves. So I was playing Keith, who Kevin had played earlier in the event of, Horn of Isha fame.
Yeah.
So, just a quick recap, but he's got like a lion chariot, a handmaiden, and 20 sisters of Avalorn, Sun Dragon BSB, some Silver Helms, some Dragger Princes, some Shadow Warriors, and 2 Sky Cutters. This was one of those games that I think started with the possibility of, being anyone's game, and then very quickly imploded horribly. Like the Falcon Horn went off. I got the first turn. Did I get the first turn? Anyway, the Falcon Horn went off. Yeah, and I got the first turn. So, the dragon couldn't go anywhere, was like stuck behind a building in a corner. The Sky Cutters had a 2-inch movement range. I pushed forward, but then like he had his Shadow Warriors in some woods, over near where his wizard was. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to suicidally charge 20 Sisters of Avalorn with my Knights of the Realm and just die to being shot on the charge.
Stand and
So
shoot.
I charged the Shadow Warriors with some mounted yeomen and my Knights of the Realm. I lose an entire rank of Knights of the Realm. So I lose half the unit to dangerous terrain running through a forest.
Yeah, it's brutal.
And I lose 2 mounted yeomen to the forest. I do win combat with the Shadow Warriors, pushes them back out wherever, and then promptly lose another Knight of the Realm to the forest while I overrun through it. Um, and I think I also rolled Snake Eyes on my overrun distance as well. So it was just not cool. And then on that same flank, my Pegasus Knights and the Baron couldn't get to anything quite ready to fight it, so they moved up, which then just led to multiple turns of them getting miasmic miraged by my opponent. And I think this is where I made a critical mistake, was as soon as he miasmic miraged me the first time, I should have just max speed withdrawn them and conserved those 500 plus points of my army.
Yeah.
Because instead they just wound up stuck there until the dragon could maneuver, and then, Pegasus Knights and the Baron are cool, but then when there's a dragon and a wizard with the illusionary white sword just stabbing you to death, is, yeah, that. So all of that died. I did kill his dragon princes down to, I think, 2 models with archer shooting and a fireball, which was cool. But then on the other flank, I think my Knights of the Realm died to the Sisters of Avalorn, so I had nothing to protect me from the Silver Helms that just ran through the rest of my army. So I think all in, I killed 2 Lothern Skycutters and 3 Shadow Warriors and 3 Dragon Princes, and then 90% of my army died, and then we just called the game at the end of turn 5 because all I had left was 2 cannons that didn't seem to be able to do anything. So it was, yeah. I think my biggest mistake in that game was not not using my mobility with the Pegasus Knights to disengage once they could no longer charge due to miasmic mirage, and keeping up the hope that he wouldn't get miasmic mirage off for 3 turns in a row, and repositioning them to go fight the Sisters of Avalorn or something else, while his dragon was just kind of stuck in the corner behind a house with its 6-inch movement range due to the Falcon Horn.
Yeah.
So a lot of mistakes on my part, but also just some terrible opening dice rolling, losing 2/3 of a unit.
Yeah. So was the forest the MVP?
I think the forest, in fact, won the game. We may have both lost, but nature won.
Exactly. And most importantly, did he blow the horn of Gondor?
Oh, he 100% did. The other thing I learned after that game is that Ilfmar weapons only apply to hand weapons and not Sisters of Avalorn longbows. That's a whole other story.
Yeah. We'll discuss that one at a later point. Okay.
Yeah.
Andrew, over to your game 5.
Yeah, so my game 5 was against a guy named David Palmer. He was running vampire counts. He had 240 model units of zombies, 2 5-packs of the dogs, wargs or whatever they're called. 6 hex wraiths. His general was on foot with some cape that gave him ethereal. He had 1 banshee, 1 terrorgeist, 1 4 model unit of the ghosts, spirit hosts. A big fuck off block of skeletons with shields and spears, and he had a BSB in there with some banner that gave him additional not combat res, but basically when you had to take crumble tests, it would be D3 less crumble.
Okay.
I don't know the name of the item. I think that was everything. It's anything that mattered anyways. So we were playing on modified flank attack. It was the same boundaries of flank attack, but it was just
Open
kill
battle.
each other.
Yeah.
Open battle. Now I lost the map roll off because I think last episode we talked about how there's 3 maps per mission. The person who loses the roll off gets to veto one, and then the winner of the roll off picks whatever the remaining 2 was. So he picked one that had the line of sight blocker on the edge of his deployment zone, like basically smack dab in the middle. And the table we were playing on had a huge fucking like mountain / mine that I had built a long time ago. But it's like at least like a foot wide by like 8 inches wide, like, so it's huge. And he chose that side of the board, which forced him to split his army basically into blocks. So he put his skeletons like right side by side with the mountain. The BSB was in the skeleton unit. And he did just back from the edge of the skeleton unit, his general, and then the banshee behind the general, and then wedged between them was the what's that big ghost chariot thing they got?
Mortis engine.
Mortis engine, yeah. So he had a mortis engine there, and then the zombies, and then the dogs. Oh, and he had bats on one flank, and then on the other side of this mountain, he had another pack of dogs, 40 zombies, and the spirit hosts. So I looked at this and I'm like, okay, I'm going to deploy everything on the very edge of my deployments, like all to one side of my deployment zone. So basically the zombies, the ghosts, and the dogs were like super far away from my army. And I basically just concentrated my whole force on like 2/3 of his. He pushed his hex race up in front of my cold one knights. And I was like, well, shit, they're ethereal. I don't have any magic in that unit, but there's no way I can get around them because they're so wide and my cold ones are so wide. So I was like, okay, fuck it. I'll just charge and hope I get combat res. So I charged that and my trade into the hex wraiths and did no wounds, obviously, but I won on combat res, just, close order plus D3 plus close order from the chariot. So he did like 1 wound. I crumbled most of the unit, and they were so far forward that he couldn't bring any back. So the next turn, he kind of didn't have enough juice to do wounds onto the cold one. So they just won on static combat res again. Even without the D3 combat res, like I just had enough to like crumble that. My Dark Riders again were just fucking on fire this game. So they shot all of his dogs off, all of his bats off, and then over the course of the game, ran around to the other flank and shot his other dogs off like the following turn. Like it was insane how good like I was rolling with those guys. At that point, he stayed very static in his deployment zone. Like undead are very slow to begin with. So like he was just like, oh, I'll move up like an inch and just kind of wait for you and try to like magic you and stuff. On his magic phases though, like he rolled Snake Eyes on the Mortis engine twice in a row on like his first or second spell he was trying to cast, so he couldn't like build up like all the debuffs and buffs because the Mortis engine, if it rolls a miscast, you roll it twice and apply both results. and both times he got one of the results that like stopped you from casting magic for the rest of the turn, but for both of his wizards. So like he would be like, okay, I'll just cast like Dance Macabre or whatever, so I get a little bit movement on my Skellies. Oh, I just shut down my magic phase. It's like shit, like that's huge because they need like all those buffs to like make their units actually good. So I pushed up the center with my witches. I was like, I don't know how to tackle this big block of just bodies and get like in between his two giant bricks to get to his general because he kept him like kind of far back. So I was like, fuck it, I'll just go for the grind. So I sent the witches into the skeletons, and over like 2 turns, they just killed and then combat res like the whole unit down. They overran into the Mortis engine. The hag one-shotted it with her ogre blade, and then overran into his general. One-shotted him with the ogre blade. Um, at that point, like I cleaned up all of his chaff, and all he had left was 2 zombie blocks, and that's it. Actually, I killed all of his chaff, and the ghost tried to charge the Charybdis during the skeleton fight, and they just straight up died. Oh yeah, the Charybdis was in there with the witches in the skeleton fight, just doing like stupid stomps and everything. So he tried to get like the flank bonus on the Charybdis, but the ghost just crumbled from the static combat res from that big fight because they just couldn't hit my witches, and they were killing like a million models a turn. Um, so at that point, he just had like the 40 model zombie blocks, and he's just like, well, I'm gonna call it like after his general died. Um, but I was like, okay, we'll tally it up. But I still got the 20-0 because he had only killed something like 1 Cold 1 Night and maybe like 6 witches the whole game. Like he kind of got dice fucked a lot of the time. Even like trying to res models, like it's a leadership test for that army, I think.
Yep.
And he was rolling like not well at all to get enough models. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna bring back like 2 skeletons. I'm like, oh Jesus. Like he could have got way more, but he just rolled so shitty. It's just like, yeah, like he had a lot of bad luck that went in my favor because going into this, like I was like, I don't know if I can deal with this. I don't have the damage output to grind out all these units if he's gonna keep bringing back like everything I do.
Yep.
And he deployed well enough to, protect like his key pieces like the general, unless I got really lucky and grinded out, which I did. But that game could have went south really quick. Even the Terrorgeist, like it tried to get a flank charge on my my Cold 1 Nights, but he just couldn't get like he failed to hit a lot and then couldn't get any wounds in, and then like I do like 1 cheeky wound there, and then it crumbled too on just static combat res. So yeah, like he had really bad luck. I was really lucky, and it ended up being a 20-0. Like even when he said like, oh, like I give up, I didn't just say like, oh, we'll do a straight 20-0, we'll tally it, but like I killed something including the bonus from like the general and the banner bonuses, something like 2,000 points, not including the zombies, and he hadn't killed like a whole unit at all, so it went pretty poorly for him.
How were his screams? Did he pull them off? Like, were they effective into you at all, or?
No, so he did. He I don't know why, but he deployed his banshee like behind his whole army, and she was like never really in a position to get a scream off. The Terrorgeist tried to scream the cold ones, and I think my general on the dragon, but it's a leadership test, and because he wasn't able to get the leadership debuffs on me, like I was rolling on leadership 10 or 9 with the cold one, so I was like, oh, I just passed. Like I think there's a -2 to it built in, but even then it's like I didn't roll high enough to take any damage, so I'm like, oh, okay. If he was able to get those spells off that he needed, like I'm pretty sure it would have been super devastating, but like he just didn't get those hexes off, so it just never came up.
Fair.
It could have been really bad though, but again, like it was just I was really lucky on my dice rolls, and he was very unlucky with his casting. unfortunately.
Sure.
But he was a super good guy, super chill. Like even when it was going kind of south for him, like he was still just like pretty chipper and like still in it. So like I don't know, props to him because it was like a pretty sound beating, kind of like what Cleary did to me on my game 3. But yeah, like he's a super good guy about it. His armor looked super cool. It had all these like weird like red blood bases. Um, but yeah, I just kind of rolled him.
Yeah, it happens. It happens sometimes. So that
Yeah.
was your game 5. That brought you into contention for top legacy faction award. Actually, for a while, I thought you won it there because the way BCP counted points, it put you ahead. So I was like, my unfortunate trip up against Cleary there has cost me that. But turns out the tournament was counting points differently, so it is what it is. But like, good on you for closing it out on a really really strong win there. So yeah, that's our wrap up for the event. That's how our games went across the board. We hope you guys enjoyed it. So I guess we're just going to start wrapping this episode up. So before I turn over the mic to you guys to close out, just reminding everybody, our next episode will be with Val as a special guest on the podcast. We'll be talking about the tournament again, but from a much more like, overall conduct of the event. What will we change? What were some really strong points that should be kept going forward? And then we're going to spend some time talking about the team tournament that we've teased, I guess, a few times, but haven't gotten around to actually discussing. So that was it for me personally. Any parting remarks on your end, Andrew?
No, just if they're listening, Val and Shane, thanks for putting on a great event. It was super fun. Definitely, if my schedule allows, I'll try to get back for another one, or if they do it like next year, definitely going to try to make it down for that because overall it was a really great time and I had fun.
Yeah, same for me. Thanks to Shane was a great just table boss and judge and so thanks to him for that, and then thanks to Val for setting the thing up. What about you, Ryan? Any points you wanna throw out there before we close out?
I mean, of course, the same like Val, Shane, everyone else involved. I'm definitely going to come up again if this happens again, or if there's another one, schedules allow, of course. And I look forward to next week when we get to unveil to the world the unhinged madness that is the teams pack that I've been picking away at for like 3 months. So
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for a team event in our neck of the woods. I think we've been riding the single player event train for too long. So time to shift gears here. All right. So that was it for us. Have a good one, and we'll see you again next week.